and welcome back to Forgotten Hollywood in my living room. So, I received a comment on my last video on the Rings of Power asking me to give it another chance. So I did. And there's a few things I didn't address then that I would love to address now after reading more articles about it, watching more of the show, and seeing viewer comments. The first thing that I would like to address, and this is something that personally drives me crazy when people talk about the Rings of Power, because they always say, well, if you look at the movies, there's some differences, but it follows the spirit of the movies. Tolkien didn't write a movie. Tolkien wrote books, plural, multiple books about Middle-earth, about the characters. Detailed accounts over what happened in Middle-earth's history and with its races and its people and how they interacted and when they went to war and when they had peace and all of that he wrote down. He created this whole history. They have access to this history, and yeah, they're claiming that Tolkien didn't go into that much detail, so they're filling in the gaps and making their things. No. Tolkien left a ton of detail. What they seem to be doing is, in the spirit of an adaptation, they are taking the elements that they like, namely, okay, we liked elves, we liked dwarves, Galadriel, cool, Elrond, and then they're doing their own thing with them. It has nothing to do with Tolkien's work. And if they're basing it on the movies, which were already adapted and therefore different from Tolkien's original work, that's not basing their work on Tolkien or the spirit of what he created at all. So, to give an example, my sister is a great artist. Very good. If she decided that she was going to sketch the Mona Lisa, as good as she is, it wouldn't look exactly the same. She wouldn't be able to prevent her unique strokes from altering the strokes of Da Vinci. She might get close, but she won't get perfect. If I was to take her picture of the Mona Lisa and I tried to make a copy, I don't have her art skills, so it would look kind of bad, and it would also look absolutely nothing like the original, because I wasn't copying the original, I was copying the copy. And that's kind of what happened with Rings of Power, is you have the original made by the master Tolkien. Then you have the adaptation made by Peter Jackson. Then you have the imitation of the imitation. And the further you get away, it becomes a game of telephone where you whisper something in someone's ear and they whisper what they heard to the next person, and so on and so forth until you go around the circle and it has completely changed from what it started. The further you get from the original, the more adaptations of adaptations you make, you just end up corrupting the original product. And that's the issue that I have with that. There is also the issue of the compressed timeline. I talked to a friend of mine who knows way more about Tolkien than I do, and she was telling me about the length of the Second Age. They are saying that a lot of dramas and such compress down a timeline, especially historic biopics. And I did a whole video on biopics, I know this. And they do compress timelines. For instance, a movie that the events take place over 2 or 3 years might be compressed down to a week. Or if they take place over 5 to 10 years, they might be compressed down to 2 or 3 years. And they're talking about taking the Second Age and compressing it down to the longest time that they said was the lifespan of one human. So 70 years, though they're probably going for more like 5 to 10 years at most because their actors aren't going to age that much and they have human characters. They say, well, if you can compress 2 years down to 1 week, why can't we compress the second age down to the lifespan of one human? Well, the issue is that my friend did the math for me. The second age was the length of time from today to the reign of Amenhotep II, who died no later than 1397 BC. We're talking ancient times to today, and we're going to compress that down to a handful of years, 70 at the most. I think the technological advances alone would make that insane. But there's also clothing styles to consider, writings, thought, philosophy, science, everything. It's just, how can you compress that much time into so short a period? So those are the things for the show in general that I did not cover the last time. But now let's look at this third episode. What did they still get wrong? Well, I still have no idea what's going on. I still have no bond with the characters. The best character in the show so far wasn't in the episode. In fact, a lot of the characters weren't in the episode. It focused about half the episode on Galadriel, and then maybe 2/3 of what was left on the elves and the humans. She didn't even see most of them. And then you get a little bit of the Harfoots. And that's the breakdown. In fact, we were halfway through the episode before we even saw a Harfoot. Most of the episode was just about what Galadriel was doing. So they still don't really have any characters that are likable, relatable. They did introduce another family of humans from Numenor, and I will let the YouTubers that know way more about Lord of the Rings than me explain why Galadriel at Numenor was a problem. I'm not as well read as someone like Nerdrotic when it comes to this sort of thing. I will leave it to them to explain that part. I will focus on the technical aspects, the plot aspects that don't work. One of the problems with this is they don't say people's names enough, so I can't remember anybody's name. They have the one elf who was in love with the human, whatever his name is. He's been captured by the orcs who have slaves of other elves and of humans, and they're being chained up and forced to dig in an open air pit when the orcs can't be in sunlight and they have to dig during the day for reasons, which personally I think is all just so that you can see people try to escape and get shot by arrows as drama and tension. Why are they digging the pit? Why are the orcs digging an open air pit when they can't be exposed to the sun? It hurts them. Which is how the elf is able to cause damage, because he jumps up with this axe in what my husband called an Air Jordan move, and he chops through their canopy, which was protecting them from the sun, and they writhe on the ground in pain because the sun hit them. And then they retreat deeper into the cave. Not 2 minutes later, the orcs are in the sun fighting the elves. Did they put on sunblock in those 2 minutes? Or was it just the initial shock of the sunlight that hurt them and then they were okay? It just makes no sense. One of the serious issues with this show on a technical scale is the CGI. This episode had a warg. And when I saw that warg, not even kidding, first thing that popped into my mind was Crash Bandicoot. It's Crash Bandicoot as a warg. If you didn't know, Crash Bandicoot was a popular video game character when I was a kid. When I was looking at this warg, it wasn't just that it looked like the monstrous version of Crash Bandicoot, but it also was really bad CGI. I mean, I've literally seen video games with better graphics than this warg. Looking back at the Peter Jackson wargs from the original trilogy, it's amazing how good they looked. And Peter Jackson didn't even think they looked that good. He wanted to do better. He wished that he had time and money to do better. Well, these people had the money. I'm pretty sure they had the time. But they gave us the mutant child of Crash Bandicoot and Peter Jackson's warg. And there was also something about the Harfoots that was troubling to me. Nori's dad had hurt his foot, and they were concerned that they would be left behind when the migration happens. Because apparently the Harfoots don't care about their sick and injured and will just let them fall behind and leave them for the wolves. Nice people. And so Nori's dad's trying to reassure his wife and his family, and he's telling them it's okay. I'll just make sure that our wagon is right at the front of the caravan, and then we set the pace, and we'll be with everyone, and it'll be fine. Then Nori gets in trouble, and they almost banished the whole family, I guess, because Nori got in trouble. The Harfoot leader says no, their wagon will stay with us at the back of the caravan, which the family treated as the same as being left behind. So I don't know if that was a plot to get rid of them without being malicious, at least outwardly malicious, by saying, oh, well, they just fell behind. It's not our fault that they couldn't keep up. Yeah, nice people. So, things that were not so bad in this episode. I still like Nori's dad. He's still likable, optimistic, and kind. Always reassuring his family that everything's going to be okay. Yeah, that was about it. That was about it. I liked Nori's dad. The stranger that is rumored to be Gandalf is at the very least a wizard of some kind, is portrayed as sort of a moron. Like my 3-year-old is more coordinated. My 11-month-old is more coordinated. Just I don't know what's up with him, but he's essentially an idiot who needs this little Harfoot to hold his hand and keep him from getting himself hurt or in danger or anything else like that. Just doesn't really endear me to the characters either because, well, first off, I don't really care about Nori. I don't really know anything about the stranger, so I don't really care about the stranger. And so Nori taking care of the stranger, I'm like, okay, you go be boring together over there. My takeaway from watching these 3 episodes is that Amazon wanted to do a high fantasy series, possibly similar to that of Game of Thrones, which was known for following multiple families and having a lot of characters and having a lot of depth and drama, except the difference is those writers knew what they were doing. Now, I haven't seen Game of Thrones, but from what I hear, the characters were complex. There were people you liked, there were people you hated. There were plot lines to follow. There was tension, there was drama. And that's the marks of good writing. Whereas with this, all they're giving me is tension and drama and no characters to like or follow, and I don't know anything about the plots because they won't tell me anything, so I don't know the stakes. I don't know really what's going on. This show doesn't honor Tolkien's work at all. If you change the name of 5 characters in 2 locations, you could put the whole thing in the world of Willow. If I lost my subscription tomorrow and I couldn't watch any more of this show, it wouldn't bother me at all. It really doesn't. Now, I have watched shows that I have binged for days on end because they had interesting characters, because they had interesting plots. This is not one of them. Honestly, I think I would be more fascinated watching wax melt than watching another episode of Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power. But if you want me to watch more, if you want me to keep reviewing it, I'll do it for you. Thanks for watching. What was your take on the show? Or have you been able to avoid it? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you like this sort of content. It really helps out. And be sure to click the bell for notifications because YouTube is notorious for not telling people when new content is posted. Let me know if there's anything else you would like me to review. I will happily watch something else if you want my take on it. And I will catch up with you next time.